She stood at the edge of the Memorial Day crowd, like she was afraid to get too close. The naval uniform was perfect, but something felt wrong. That's when the photographer zoomed in on her collar. A small pin, barely visible. The Blackwater 7 emblem. He lowered his camera immediately. Everyone knew that story. 7 operators, 1 impossible mission in the Black Sea, 0 survivors. Except now there was a woman wearing their insignia, standing at their memorial, 15 years after they all supposedly died. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If stories about hidden heroes and untold sacrifices touch your heart the way they touch mine, consider subscribing to our channel. Every story we share is about people like her. People whose courage deserves to be remembered. The morning fog rolled in from Norfolk Naval Base, making everything feel suspended in time. This Memorial Day ceremony marked the 15th anniversary of the Black Sea incident. 7 U.S. Navy operators had vanished while preventing what intelligence called a nuclear disaster. Their bodies were never recovered. Their mission never declassified. Their families were told they died in a training accident. Admiral Nathan Cross noticed her second. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with makeup or fashion. High cheekbones carved by hardship, auburn hair pulled back in a regulation bun, emerald eyes that held too many secrets. But it was her military bearing that caught his attention, combat-ready even in dress whites. The Admiral walked closer. That's when he saw the pin. His blood turned to ice water. The Blackwater 7 insignia wasn't something you could buy or fake. Each one was laser-etched with unique identification markers, distributed to 7 people who supposedly never made it home. Security guards were moving through the crowd, but Admiral Cross raised his hand, freezing everyone in place. He walked directly to her, both facing the memorial wall. Neither spoke. They just stared at 7 names that had been added in secret, against protocol. The woman's name was Sarah Mitchell now. 15 years ago, she'd been Lieutenant Commander Elena Cross, the Admiral's daughter and the only woman selected for the Blackwater 7. A linguistics expert who spoke 8 languages, combat diver, sniper who never missed. The perfect ghost for an impossible mission. The Black Sea incident had started with intercepted communications about a rogue submarine carrying nuclear materials. The Blackwater 7 were deployed within 6 hours. Their mission, board the submarine, neutralize the threat, disappear without leaving evidence America had acted unilaterally. They succeeded. The nuclear materials were secured, the submarine was scuttled, the crisis was averted. But the extraction went wrong. Their transport helicopter was hit by an unmarked surface-to-air missile. The official report said all 7 operators went down with the aircraft. The truth was more complicated. Elena had been thrown clear of the explosion, found floating 3 days later, barely alive. When she woke up in a black site medical facility, she was given a choice. Return to service under a new identity or be officially declared dead like her teammates. She chose death because she'd seen something that changed everything. The submarine they'd boarded wasn't just carrying nuclear materials. It was carrying documents, evidence of a conspiracy that went higher than anyone imagined. The Blackwater 7 hadn't been sent to stop a terrorist threat. They'd been sent to clean up someone's mistake, to bury evidence that implicated officials in both governments. And once the mission was complete, they were supposed to be buried too. The missile that hit their transport wasn't enemy fire. It was friendly. Someone had decided 7 operators were an acceptable loss to keep a secret. 6 of them paid that price. Elena survived by accident, and she'd spent 15 years living with that knowledge. Admiral Cross knew none of this. He'd been told his daughter died a hero, buried an empty coffin, accepted a folded flag. But standing next to this woman, seeing that pin, feeling something familiar in her presence, he felt his carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. Elena reached into her pocket slowly and pulled out a small metal cylinder, weathered and scarred. A message capsule, the kind used for emergency communications in submarines. She'd carried it for 15 years, waiting for this moment. She pressed it into Admiral Cross's hand without looking at him. The chaplain reached the part of the ceremony where the Blackwater 7 were to be honored. Their names were read slowly, with reverence, each one followed by a bell toll. When they reached the 4th name, Elena's lips moved silently. Lieutenant Commander Elena Cross. Her real name, being spoken at her own memorial. Admiral Cross's hand tightened on the message capsule. Something about the way she stood, the slight tilt of her head when listening, the way her fingers curled when fighting emotion. Small things a father would notice. He knew. God help him, he knew. After the seventh bell toll, Admiral Cross broke protocol. He turned to face Elena fully, studying her face with an intensity that made several people step back. Recognition was dawning. His daughter was alive. His daughter had been abandoned. His daughter had been betrayed by the very nation she'd sworn to protect. Security was closing in, but Admiral Cross raised his hand higher, his voice carrying across the ceremony with commanding authority. Everyone waited, sensing the gravity of the moment. Elena finally looked directly at her father. The years had aged them both, carved lines of grief and duty into their faces. But his eyes were the same, that mixture of steel and kindness that had made him both a warrior and a father. She saw recognition there, dawning like a terrible sunrise. The message capsule contained everything. Names, dates, recordings from that final mission. Evidence that the Blackwater Seven had been sacrificed not for national security, but to protect careers and cover up a weapons deal gone wrong. She'd risked everything coming here, but some truths demanded to be told. Elena reached up slowly and unpinned the Blackwater Seven insignia from her collar. She held it out to her father, her hand steady despite the earthquake in her chest. He took it with trembling fingers, examining the unique markings that proved beyond doubt this was real. Elena spoke for the first time, her voice barely above a whisper, but carrying in the sudden stillness. 3 words that changed everything. 3 words that confirmed what he'd begun to suspect. 3 words that shattered 15 years of carefully maintained lies. The cemetery fell into complete silence. Admiral Cross looked at the memory card, then at his daughter, then at the 7 names on the memorial wall. 6 of them truly dead. 1 of them standing before him, having sacrificed everything to protect a truth that others had killed to hide. If you've made it this far, you understand that some sacrifices go deeper than death. Some heroes have to disappear to protect the truth. If this story moved you, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs to remember that courage sometimes means standing alone, even when that means standing at your own memorial. The Admiral folded his daughter into an embrace that 15 years of grief had been waiting to give. Around them, the Memorial Day ceremony continued, but for 2 people, the war had finally ended. The last ghost of the Blackwater Seven had come home, not for forgiveness, not for recognition, but for the 6 teammates who couldn't speak for themselves. In her pocket, Elena carried 6 more message capsules, 1 for each family who'd been lied to about how their loved ones died. The truth would cost her everything, again. But this time, she wouldn't be alone. This time, the truth would have a witness in the one person whose reaction mattered most. Her father chose to believe her over the uniform he wore, the institution he served, the lies he'd been told. As the ceremony ended and the crowd began to disperse, Elena Cross stood at her own grave marker, finally able to mourn her teammates properly. The woman who'd been Sarah Mitchell for 15 years was gone. The soldier who'd been betrayed was back. And the Blackwater Seven, those magnificent ghosts who'd saved the world and been erased for it, would finally get the honor they deserved. The truth, like the tide, always finds its way to shore. Sometimes it just takes 15 years and 1 woman brave enough to wear a dead unit's pin to her own memorial service.